So I know I've done a couple of live videos, but this is just what happens when I'm spending time with the Lord. Just praying and things like that. He pours stuff into me, and so I feel like He's giving it to me for a reason. So I'll do a million videos a day, a million posts a day. It doesn't matter because I know somebody needs it. Everybody has different kind of problems, issues, and battles that they're facing. So let's talk about this very quick. Why does the enemy attack marriages so hard? Why is it, right, that you can be in a relationship, say you're, with a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and some people are even shacked up, right? And it just seems like the relationship is just so wonderful, and you're on the phone, you hang up, no, you hang up, I love you, and everything's just so wonderful. You can't get enough of each other's presence. You're always excited to see each other and things like that. And then it seems like when you get married, right, all hell starts breaking loose. You're not getting along. There's a lot of stress. You go through these hard seasons. It feels like everything is just trying to break your marriage. Now, a lot of people will say this, right? The first thing is, well, when you get married, you really get to know a person. When you start living with a person, you really get to know them. But there are some people who were living together, shacked up together, and their relationship was fine. Let me introduce something to you, a different way of looking at it, all right? When you get married, you're making a covenant between you, your spouse, and God, right? Now, before you get married and you're just in a relationship, the enemy doesn't care about that, right? You have a relationship, fine, whatever. But when you enter into a covenant with God, all right, the enemy hates anything that God creates. Now, check this out. When God made Adam and Eve, He loved them. He loved His creation, but He hated sin. So what the enemy said he was going to do is, I'm going to take what you hate and put it inside of what you love in hopes that you will have to destroy what you love. And this is why Jesus was sent to become sin, to mess up the enemy's plan. See, the enemy is so stupid. He thought that, well, if I could put what you hate inside of what you love, you would therefore have to hate what you love and what you created. But the Lord said, no, not so. I have a plan. I have a way to pay that penalty. All right, where I can wash away their sins. All right, so think about that. From the dawn of time, the enemy has been trying to destroy anything that God creates. So that's why we see all these things happen in the world. That's why the Bible talks about the spirit of the Antichrist, and they're against marriage and anything. He said, be fruitful and multiply. They have abortions. Anything that God creates and says is good, the enemy tries to come against it. So this is why you can be a boyfriend and you can be a girlfriend, and you can be, and this is part of the reason. Obviously, there's other factors, but I just wanted to introduce this thought to you so you can see it from a spiritual warfare perspective and understand that some things you're not going to win by arguing in your marriage. Some things, it's not that your spouse is the enemy. It's not that your spouse is stupid. It's not that your spouse just doesn't get it. A lot of times we're ignorant to Satan's devices, and there's a spiritual element there that we have to come against, right? So, like I said, you made this covenant with God. You made these vows with God and your spouse. And so the enemy sees that and he says, I've got to destroy that covenant. I have to come against that. And now the thing that unfortunately is, it takes two. Because you made the covenant with two, just like it takes two to make the baby, all right? It takes two to fight for the marriage. Unfortunately, some people, all right, they're going to just give up. Some people are just going to quit. But what you need to do, I want to, how would you say, equip you with new tactics to fight for your marriage, to breathe CPR into your marriage, in that dead marriage, is to realize, man, I'm not wrestling against flesh and blood. Because I've created something, I've created this marriage, I've established this covenant with God, I become a target to the enemy. And the enemy wants to destroy that because God is the one that created marriage. So anything that God makes, the enemy wants to tear down. So it doesn't matter how much I argue with my spouse. It doesn't matter how much I try to beat them over the head. It doesn't matter if I try to leave a Bible verse out or a marriage book for them to read. Some things is spiritual warfare. Some things I don't need to say anything about. I just need to go get into the prayer closet and go to war on behalf of my marriage, go to war on behalf of my covenant. And sometimes you will see victory, all right? There are some cases, obviously myself, it takes two. Two people got to say, hey, let's get this thing. Let's fight this thing. But sometimes your prayers will prevail, okay? But you got to understand that God also doesn't really, he's not going to disrespect somebody's free will. So what I've seen in my own experience, right, is that you pray, and what God will do is he will approach that spouse, if they're not praying and agreeing with you, right? If you've got a spouse and they're agreeing with you and they say, man, let's come together against the enemy and protect this covenant, then fine. But if you have one that's kind of like, out there doing their own thing, cheating or whatever it is, God will approach them in a way where he gives them an opportunity to make a decision. And I've seen this happen, all right? He will approach them. He will mess with them to the point where they know this is God. This is God trying to talk to me. And they will have a decision to make. And trust me, I've seen it time and over again. If they choose not to comply and listen to God, in some cases he will remove them. And in other cases, he's going to ask you to just carry your cross and endure, and to keep fighting and to keep hitting the prayer closet. And he's testing your faith to see if you believe that he can change that spouse, even when it doesn't look like it, even at the lowest. But in some cases, because that spouse is going to be a hindrance, God will make it where they leave. He can harden their heart, and he will also make it where you're biblically free, different circumstances happening so that you're not, in sin or outside of the will of God. I've seen it happen over and over again. But that is the perspective that I wanted to give you guys, all right? The enemy, and I've seen this in my life so many times, your boyfriend and girlfriend, everything's fine, everything's good. And when you get married, you create a covenant with God. And that is what the enemy is coming against. No, the enemy doesn't care about your car. He doesn't care about your job. What he cares about is what you created with God. He says, I'm coming against that covenant. I'm coming against those vows that you made with God. The same thing he did with Adam and Eve. For those of you just logging in live, I'll say it one more time. God made his creation, and he loved his creation. He hated sin. The enemy said, I'm going to take what you hate and put it in what you love in the hopes that I can get you to destroy your creation, destroy what you love. That's how bitter the devil is. That's how mad the devil is. That's why, like I said, he comes against anything that God has established and created and said that it was good. Marriage, he said, be fruitful and multiply. People are having abortions. Everything that you see that is the Antichrist spirit, it comes against God's order. It's just something for you to think about, a different perspective. You guys have a blessed and wonderful day in Jesus' name.